Stay curious, try to learn, ask questions why these things are happening the way they're happening. Build a range from technical skills to soft skills that help to influence people. And just don't deliver research, deliver a perspective.
Welcome to the Curiosity Current, the podcast where we dive deep into what's shaping today's trends and tomorrow's consumers. I'm your host, Stephanie, and I'm so glad you're joining me. Each episode, we tap into the minds of researchers, innovators, and insights professionals to explore how curiosity drives discovery and how discovery drives better decisions in an ever-changing market landscape. Whether you're a data enthusiast, a strategy pro, or like me, just endlessly fascinated by human behavior, this is the place for you. So get ready to challenge your assumptions, spark some fresh thinking, and have some fun along the way. Let's see where curiosity takes us next with this brand new episode. Welcome back to the Curiosity Current. Today, I'm joined on the hosting side by my colleague, Tiffany Mullen, who is AYTM's VP of Growth Operations and also produces this very podcast. Welcome, Tiffany.
Thank you. I am excited to be on this side of the mic today.
Well, we're excited to have you and also excited to have today's guest. Our guest today is Marcus Cunha Jr., the Robert O. Arnold Professor of Marketing at the University of Georgia and the director of UGA's Master of Marketing Research Program. This is a program that has been shaping the next generation of insights professionals for over 4 decades. Here at AYTM, we've had the incredible opportunity to collaborate with Marcus in the UGA MMR program over the past few years, helping students bring real-world research experiences to life using the AYTM platform. Marcus has spent his career at the intersection of academia and practice, studying cognition, judgment, and decision-making in the consumer context. He's worked with multinational corporations in the U.S. and Brazil, teaching everything from statistical analysis to media effectiveness and helping research executives translate data into actionable business insights. In this episode today, we're going to explore how marketing research education is evolving in a world of AI, automation, and rapidly changing consumer behavior. We're going to dig into the skills the next generation of insights professionals need to thrive and what it takes to prepare students, not just to analyze data, but to shape strategy and drive impact. Marcus, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much for having me, both you and Tiffany. It's a pleasure to be back on AYTM podcast.
Nice.
Yeah, excited to have you.
So, Marcus, a lot of times how we like to start out on the podcast is to really just talk a little bit about your career journey. You know, you've obviously had a remarkable journey spanning academia, consulting, and of course, leadership at the UGA MMR program. Can you just walk us through like how you became interested in marketing first, right? And then ended up pursuing a PhD and doing academic research, and then ultimately sort of landing in this also leadership position where you're really shaping this graduate program curriculum and the future of our insights professionals.
Wow, I might take the whole podcast time. I'm old. I think it's a very fun and hopefully inspiring story. So it all started like actually my dad was an executive of marketing and sales executive for Alcoa, the American London company in Brazil. So I once picked up one of his marketing books. It was happened to be Philip Kotler's marketing book, and they started reading it about the 4 Ps, and it's like, wow, people really plan all these things they sell to us. And so it became really interesting to that in that. So then, in my undergrad in business in Brazil as well, I majored in marketing, but I always loved the more quantitative portions of marketing and even the finance courses. I was probably one of the few students that loved the marketing research course. With most students, it's like, that's a course I have to take to graduate. And then from there, I became like a graduate research assistant to a faculty that had just came back from his doctorate degree in France. And that's a really interesting connection to marketing research. He was actually an information systems professor, but he was doing a project in marketing intelligence systems. And I was part of his grant, and he had worked, his advisor in France had actually developed a software for marketing research. which is actually very popular in Europe and now in Brazil and South America. It's called Sphinx. They have over 50,000 clients around the world. And his advisor actually offered this faculty to distribute this software in Brazil. And then he was like busy with his faculty activities and had just come back after 5 years living away. So he didn't know many people. So he invited me to like, let's start this company and see where it goes. So we started this company distributing this software and became really successful in Brazil because it was very user friendly relative to the tools that were available in the mid 90s. And then after that, while I was doing that, I also did my master's in Brazil, more from like an academic standpoint, not like an MBA. And that's when I really got interested in pursuing a career in academia. And then I decided to sell my part in the company, my equity in the company, to him and move to the US to do my PhD at the University of Florida. Academic research in marketing can usually be divided in three areas. There's like academic marketing modeling, marketing strategy, and consumer behavior, right? So the first two are what we refer in the field, the people who study the hunter, the companies that are hunting for the bear, which is the consumer, right? So the people that do consumer behavior, they're more interested in the bear. Why the bear eats the way they eat, their patterns, and how can we protect them to some extent from the hunter and all that. So when I think people that are interested in marketing research, ultimately they're interested in understanding behavior. And that's why my area of interest became that. So from there, I was recruited to be a faculty at the University of Washington in Seattle, where I was there for 8 years. And then UGA recruited me. And I think to some extent was because of my roots in marketing research and having that distributing that software and training. Because you sell those softwares, you do the demo, people love it, but they don't know how to use it. Then you have to sell the training, right? So I trained many, many researchers in Brazil and South America. And then I moved to UGA, and then I started teaching the MMR program. I loved the program. And in 2017, I became the director of the program.
I'm curious now that, this is really where you sit. What is the most rewarding part of working with the next generation of insights professionals for you?
Yeah, there's a lot of things that like excites me about it. So first thing is like seeing every year this like group of like really talented but raw talent students joining the program and seeing like over 11 months how they evolve to become professionals ready to start their career. It's very interesting to me, like on their first day of orientation, there's some anxiety, social anxiety. They're meeting 29 other students, they're meeting faculty and staff. And then in their mind, they don't know where their junior is going, but I know exactly where they're gonna be 11 months from now. You know, they come from like, I don't know who I'm sitting next to I know you're gonna be best friends by the end of 11 months. Some are become friends for life. We have NMRs that graduated 30 years ago. They still do their girls trip.
I love that.
So I know and I see that every year because exactly 4 weeks after graduation, the new class arrives. So I know exactly what you expect, but they don't. So I love that. Another thing that I really like is seeing the alumni success. As a faculty, a lot of times you teach students. I teach MBAs and MMRs. I taught undergrads in my past. You teach them. Maybe if they link to you on LinkedIn, you will know what's going on a little bit with their professional life. But with MMR, they become part of a family, right? So we follow their progression. We see them through our Future of Insights Summit. They come to speak to my class. They become like, we just had the Future of Insights Summit in Atlanta, and the students of mine of like 7 to 10 years ago are now directors and vice presidents of suppliers and clients. The students that were my babysitters, now they have two kids and they're a partner of a major supplier. So I really like seeing not only their career progression, but their life progression. Now they come like, how tell us how much the MMR program has changed their life. One more thing I think that's mostly for my own interest is that I really like recruiting students to the program. I feel like, Kirby Smart, the coach for the University of Georgia football team, like I need this player to be in my team. And I especially love when they think they want to go to another program and I flip them.
I love that. That's gotta feel good. Yeah.
I don't know if I have time for a little story, but one that comes to my mind was a student. She's now a director of research at UCB, a major pharmaceutical company. But she had an offer from us, and she had an offer from another Master of Marketing program from a school that just said a private school that they like to call themselves the Harvard of the South. And then I knew she was leaning towards that university. And she came to visit both. She was going to visit university. And it's like, well, since you're going back to Florida, she was from Florida, let's talk in Athens and take a look at the program. And then it was spring break week. And I said, okay, yeah, no, we'll host you. I'll take you up to lunch and ask, are there any students in town that interested in, taking the student to lunch and take her on a tour of Athens, their campus, and the MMR program? He said, of course, 4 or 5 students joined me. And then they did the tour. They left, so her parents were driving her to visiting the universities. And then she left, and then a week later, she accepted our admission. And then exactly like 1 year later at graduation, her parents came to talk to me and say, like, I don't know what magic you worked. She was set to accept the other offer. As soon as she got in the car, she said, I'm coming to the UGA MMR program. And I talked to her, it's like, so what made change your mind? It's like, if it is a program that the director makes the time to come and talk to me, and the students who are in spring break are excited to come and do it, that's the place where I want to be. And I just love case stories like that. It's building that culture that the students that always want to be connected and come back.
Yeah, and we can attest to the amount of students that come out of, like, at UGA and the programs over there that make their way even as employees at AYTM that, just talk about how incredible the programs are over there, so that noise definitely makes its way into the industry in general, for sure.
I love that.
Also, I didn't know that you were, local to Florida. I was listening to your bear reference earlier, and then you mentioned University of Florida. I was wondering why you didn't pick a gator for that one.
We don't want to kill the gators.
Yeah, exactly, exactly. Awesome. Well, you bring such an interesting background from both academia and real world consulting experience to the table. I'm curious when you think about that mix, how it's shaped the way that you've built the MMR program at UGA, and what real world lessons do you think that the students really need the most before they start jumping into the industry that you're infusing into the curriculum over there?
No, I think that's a great question. I think my academic background kind of pushes me to emphasize rigor, critical thinking and strong methodological grounding because publishing academic paper is a grueling process. Peer review process is a grueling process. You need to kind of anticipate what kind of holes they're going to poke on your research before you submit a paper. So yeah, I think that's a part of it. My consulting experience, I think, brings value to trying to make students understand that if you do research that does not influence a decision, you're just creating costs to the company. So we build the program around these two things, like academic rigor, but also like how can we influence decisions, in a way that companies can perform better, consumers can receive better products and service. Okay. We also emphasize a lot, and you guys know that we use a lot about AYTM for that, real life projects with corporate partners. And a lot of our class projects, they are more focused on real data sets, real problem solving rather than tests. Very few of our classes have exam because I don't want to, there's not much value for our graduate students in a program that's designed to produce professionals to go to an interview and say, I studied 12 hours for that test.
Right. I have so much conceptual knowledge. Yeah.
But they can say like, hey, did this project and I thought it was going to go this way, X, Y, and Z, and I faced these bumps on the road, and this is how we figure out how to address the disease. So that's how we approach the rigor with the practice in the program.
I'm going to jump ahead here on a question because I think it's super relevant here. When you're thinking about striking that balance between teaching the academic foundations and really getting students ready to drive those major business decisions in a real world, you talked about some of those projects or hands-on exercises that you found really helped them turn that theory into action. Are there any specific stories or examples of types of things that you're doing in your environment to kind of bridge that gap?
Yeah, and I can talk about some corporate projects that I mentor. We've done a corporate project for UPS, probably like about 3 years ago, which was segmenting that small and medium business, in which a lot of times companies come to the table to this project thinking like, it's our relationship with universities, we're helping the students, but we actually did a segmentation that they implemented as their national segmentation solution for for UPS.
And the UPS segmentation. Nice.
Yes, and I know you guys had a podcast with Sarah Montgomery recently from Coca-Cola. She's one of our alums, and she's been our contact for the Coca-Cola projects in the past 3 years. And we also did 2 segmentations and typing tools for 2 of the product lines that they are using right now. So it's really like, it's not just a class project. It's really impacting companies, and the students really see the impact that they cause.
I have a question just to continue along in this vein, but maybe from a slightly different lens. So, a pattern that has been coming up in the podcast with some of our other guests, particularly those that work at brands, like we were just talking about. This trend is that more and more often we are seeing that consumer insights functions have a seat at the table. Researchers are expected to have a point of view and influence strategy rather than simply report the news, which is, I think, I will say when I first entered the industry, particularly on the supplier side, it could feel like that sometimes. I'm here to be a truth teller. And that's not inherently bad, but it's like you're not you shouldn't just be a truth teller. There's more beyond that. And it's been really interesting to hear that the expectations, even within companies, are different. We're not having to knock down those walls and invite ourselves in, but that there's more invitation from the C-suite to be part of those decisions. Are you seeing similar trends? And do you feel like a lot of the way that you prepare students then is kind of focused on being part of business strategy and those conversations that push the business forward and outcomes that can be measured rather than executional prowess only?
Yeah, no, definitely. We teach them the methods and the analysis, and they say, okay, so the cast statistics significant, but so what? Now, or even then like, okay, significant this, let's say concept A is better than the current concept that we have there, okay? But how costly will be to implement concept way? Relative, what's the marginal gain that we're gonna have there? Might be statistically significant, but might not make sense from a business standpoint. So, you're probably familiar with that joke. I don't know. It goes like this: there is a guy lost on a hot air balloon, and then like he's a CMO of a company, and he asked the guy on the ground, say, "Do you know where I am?" It's like, "Oh yeah, your latitude is X, your longitude is Y, your altitude is A, and this and that." And then the CMO said, "You must be a research analyst." It's like, "How do you know?" Because you're getting all this information that's correct, and I still don't know where I am.
Yeah, that's the danger, right? Yeah.
Yes. So that's the thing we really emphasize. We do have methods course, but we emphasize a lot the delivery of persuasive insights that will help to people to make decision. Because otherwise, research that stays on a hard drive is a cost. If you become a cost center, you're going to be the first one to go when things are not going well. So time insights to ROI, it's a challenge, but that's what needs to be done because CFOs are the ones that are going to approve budgets. And if we cannot talk to a CFO about the ROI, it's going to be harder for you to grow your influence in the company.
For sure. And I think that I think especially researchers get caught up in wanting to like, oh, I need to prove ROI. Well, I worked in, especially quantitative researchers, feeling like they need very exact, strong data. ROI, we can use some back of the envelope math. You know what? It's okay, right? So you might not have every piece of data that you need to make the most compelling story, but I guarantee you there's data that proves your value. And it's not going to be a perfect data set, but it never is. So,
And I said, like, sometimes is the impact is long term. When you're changing the branding, the position, you're not going to see results in a quarter. It'll take years, right? But you need to be able to show the impact of the research. Even if it's not any more money now, you can show that attitudes toward the brand have, changed slightly. And that eventually, will come down the funnel, converted into sales.
Yeah, definitely. When you think about the like broader academia set, right? All the programs that sort of exist throughout the world. And you're talking about sort of these gaps that exist that we're trying to fill. How does the UGA program change over time to fill these gaps that exist in getting to train these new professionals in storytelling and using insights to drive ROI and all the things that kind of come along with the insights industry changing?
Yeah, I think academia tends to be siloed, and a lot of times people are doing research on like very important issues, and they're trying to identify normative model that like how things should work, but that might not be the way things work around the world. But also, one example I like to use is that when we're doing mathematical research in binary numbers in the 50s, there was no application for that, right? However, if we have not done that, we wouldn't have computers. So the way the MMR program balances that, the rigor with that, we, from our inception, we were, mm, um, you know, created to support the industry. So the MMR program was also created with a endowment from the Coca-Cola company and other like companies like Nielsen and Mark, because a lot of scanner data was becoming available in the late 70s, and there was no skills to analyze that. So the Coca-Cola company endowed the University of Georgia to create this program to develop those skills. So we were created to be serving the industry, not like a master's program that's a stepping stone for like, if you do well in your master's program, we invite you to our PhD program.
right. It's like a practical program. Yeah.
Yes, it was created for the industry, is closely tied with the industry. We have an advisory board, that AYTM is part of, that help us to guide where the industry is going. We are currently going through a curriculum overview and review that's not led by the professors and what the professors want to teach, but by a committee of professionals of our advisory board. So we are, to that extent, we are a very unique program that's not created like, let's create a pipeline for PhD programs. The faculty will teach what their interests are. No, we are guided by the industry.
So, Marcus, one of the questions that we've been eager to talk to you about is, with the rise of automation, generative AI, and kind of related to both of those things, this emerging connectedness of data sources that's really transforming the market research and insights industry. From that lens, are there any particular skills that you think the next generation of researchers need to thrive in an insights roles? And are there any new competencies that you're focusing on preparing students just in that context of AI and data connectedness?
Yeah, no, of course. First of all, for people that are out there thinking about this career or in this career, I can tell is not being the first time that the industry was freaked out by new technology, right? It was like, there's the big data era, there was the do-it-yourself era, and so adaptability is a very important skill. So of course we do have to have the technical skills, data integration, analytics, comfort using AWOL's AI tools are must-haves. There's some research recently showing that middle level managers, they are resisting in adapting AI, whether they don't want to learn something new or they are afraid of losing their jobs, and that the C-suite team is trying to push that the new talent come with those skills so they can push the middle managers to adopt. So our students have to have that. We also think in terms about like human skills, curiosity, creativity, empathy, and the ability to ask the right questions. You know, at this point, AI cannot do that yet. Even in the technical work, AI they can do 80% of the heavy lifting, but that 20% that's where you're gonna make your contribution. Right? Strategic skills the ability to frame insights on the context of this decisions, business decision, not just research outputs, whether they are driven by AI or not. And as I said, we are emphasizing adaptability. The world is going to be changing, and it's going to be changing fast. You cannot just be doing what you be doing 10 years ago, but you still have a lot to contribute regardless of whatever new technologies come. And I actually have noticed, like, since when we had our summit last summer in August, there was a lot more feeling of like the doom and gloom about AI. I don't know if it was just AI, election year or whatever, like uncertainty of a recession. But this year, the future of insights, people seem to be much more comfortable with AI, and there's some excitement about it. So that was like a really comforting for me to hear.
Yeah, we're definitely seeing that too. I think even just, yeah, with our just in our own company and with our customers too, right? Just that, yeah, a lot of hand wringing earlier on, and then as we start to understand the as people start to figure out their role as the human in the loop, I think a lot of that starts to dissipate. So,
Yeah, I think in the industry, as people lean into, like you mentioned, the human skill curiosity and just being curious about how things like AI and technology and automations can streamline their workflows and give them opportunities to really lean harder into the insight side of things and the storytelling side of things. Being really curious and just playing around with stuff is really important in this time, right? When things are changing rapidly, quickly. You've talked a lot about people coming out of UGA and moving into new stages of their careers. Obviously, the UGA MMR program has turned out so many leaders across both the client and the supplier side. When you look at where alumni have ended up, are there any patterns or lessons that have really shaped the way that you structure the curriculum or the mentorship opportunities today? And when you think ahead from that, how do you see methods evolving to really get more students ready to exist in the world of complexity and cross-disciplinary demands and the data-heavy world that they're stepping into, tied to those historical alumni's learnings?
So the patterns that I usually observe, like both from the market and the student, is that job opportunities for students straight out of the program tend to be fewer on the client side than on the supplier side. Okay, that's because a lot of the client side positions, like they say, 3 years of supplier experience, this it is desirable. But we do have a lot of client companies that hire from the program and say like, that's the best kept secret because we get students that are excellent, really prepared day one, and they don't have biases on different cultures from different companies, right? So they become very loyal to the company. And on the student side, there are students that think like, I work really hard to acquire these technical skills. I'm afraid if I'm going to the brand side, I might lose those because I might be project management, right? Then I'd rather go and do supplier first, be involved with a lot of projects. But there's some students that like, if I don't have to touch SPSS or SAS for the rest of my life, but it's cool, but I still understand research and work with my partners to influence my internal clients. That's the way, I like to see my career evolving. And when it comes to skills, I think like more and more AI will be able to do the hard skills, right? But it is important that you understand. I tell them like, if you don't know what you don't know, when you get the answer from AI, you're gonna think it's correct. So I can do complex analysis using AI, but I know more or less what to expect, what the results should be, and I can cross-check using SPSS or Jump or SAS. But if you don't know, you don't know how to evaluate that. So, but AI will be able to do that. What is going to be harder for AI is to incorporate the soft skills, the persuasive skills that do that. And we emphasize that a lot, not only through group projects, but for example, we have sessions just on how to develop persuasive PowerPoints. Most of the students do a couple of individual presentations where they receive feedback from faculty to the point that it's like, you didn't step away from the podium, you only made contact with that one person. I was like, just because I'm in the room and I'm grading, it doesn't mean that you need to be looking at it. And one day there will be a CMO, you don't need to be just looking at that person. Make contact or everything, like use your hands to emphasize points. So we provide like all these soft skills to make sure they have that. So, and I think moving forward, in addition to the new technologies and new tools that become available that they will have to learn, I think more and more is this ability to influence decision making. And you don't influence decision making with base rates, percentage. We actually were talking about this in class yesterday. I said, you don't usually see, politicians that want to persuade people saying, oh, 8% of single mothers in Ohio have to work two jobs to pay for their bills. No, they'll say like, I met Tiffany, you know. Uh, Tiffany is a single mom in Ohio. She has two kids, John and Mary. They struggle. Tiffany might be the only person in Ohio that's facing that situation, right? But just because the salience of the information of the storytelling is so much persuasive than saying the percentage, the base rates, and so on.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely.
I don't know if you have kids, Tiffany,
Yeah, I do not. Dog mom of 3, though.
but you live in Florida, don't you?
I am in Florida. Yep. I am in St. Petersburg, Florida.
Okay, cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, so Marcus, we spent a lot of time so far really focused on your approach to running the UGA MMR program, but I would love to pivot toward the end here and just talk a little bit about your research. I know you've shared at conferences and are currently working on a journal article around spheres of influence, specifically exploring popularity as a source of perceived expertise. It's interesting. It was interesting for me to read that because AYTM has been doing some research in a slightly similar vein in partnership with Revlon. We're focusing specifically on the role of celebrities versus influencers and how they sort of have different perceptions and ultimately different impacts on brand perceptions. But I would love it if you could talk a little bit about spheres of influence, kind of what that is and how popularity engenders perceptions of expertise and what are the implications of that.
Okay. I think from an academic standpoint, expertise at least is associated with knowledge. How much knowledge you have, you study the area or you are well known for being an expert in your area. What we're showing here is that just the fact that you're popular, people can actually see you as an expert. And I think one interesting finding that, right, and we know like if somebody is an influencer in a given product category, let's say makeup, right? So they might, because of their post and all that, be seen as an expert. But should they be seen as an expert if they are then trying to influence people who are thinking about buying fertilizer, right? So the theory would say you should not, because that person has not established an expertise there. So that's what we call evaluating proximal and distal product categories. And we show that just because you're popular on a proximal category, if you do makeup and you influence fashion, but that can also carry over to like a distal category, the fertilizer. People think you're an expert in fertilizer just because you're popular. So That was an interesting finding that they have in this research. We have another piece of research. If we have like a few minutes that we have is on the effect of color saturation on consumers' perception of product potency, which is basically like what we find is that products that have a higher color saturation, their packaging or the product itself, people make the inference that, if it's a scent, will be a stronger scent. If it's a lower saturation, it's a milder scent.
Totally makes intuitive sense, doesn't it?
And we show that inference has like a crossover effect on other senses that we have. We give people, the same, they cannot see the candle, but they can see a picture of the candle where we manipulate the saturation of the color of the candle. They're smelling the same candle and they think, oh, if the candle has a higher saturation, oh, it's a much stronger smell, or it's a milder smell, or even color of paper, a paper with higher saturation. Oh, that's a much thicker paper than just other paper, which are exactly the same product. We did some research in we review a lot of product categories in a Target on the Target website, and we show that like about 57% of the companies are using saturation the wrong way based on what they want to communicate the potency of their products. You guys know the Sunburn sunscreen?
Yeah, the yellow and brown. Yeah.
Yeah, we estimate that if they follow our advice by putting like a higher SPS with a higher saturation on the packaging, they might increase their sales by $23 million based on our experiments.
Because is it perceived efficacy in that context for that one? Like it's stronger SPF because it's bolder or more saturated?
So if you look at their packaging, and I understand their thinking behind it, so they show like a SPF 70. Their packaging has a lighter saturation, which means like you get more protection, you're not gonna get as dark. The 50 SPF has a darker because you're gonna get darker. But actually, when we flip and put the 50 where we think it should be and the 70 should be, the choice proportion for that brand increases.
That's such a perfect example. Yeah, that's awesome. Very cool.
Yeah, the psychology of color, right? Like it's so very interesting. Awesome. Well, this is usually something that we like to ask all of our guests when we close out. What's one piece of advice that you would offer to someone that's starting out in the world of insights or strategy?
All right. No, that's a great closing question. Stay curious. Like we talk about curiosity is going to be one of the skills. Try to learn. Ask questions why. Why do things are happening the way they're happening? Said, build a range, build a range from technical skills to, soft skills that help to influence people. And just don't deliver research. Deliver a perspective. Deliver an impactful piece of insight that will make at least people think about like, are we doing the right things or can we do things better? So I think those are, you asked for one, I gave you three.
I love it. No, those were great. Well, thank you so much, Marcus, for your time today. This has been an excellent conversation. Can't wait for this episode to come out and people get to hear about your research and what you're doing at UGA. So thank you again so much for your time.
No, thank you. It was a pleasure.
The Curiosity Current is brought to you by AYTM. To find out how AYTM helps brands connect with consumers and bring insights to life, visit AYTM.com. And to make sure you never miss an episode, subscribe to The Curiosity Current on Apple, Spotify, YouTube, or wherever you get your podcasts. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next time.